Okay, here I'm going to go over a couple problems from the 4.2, solving quadratics by square rooting. So we learned how to solve a quadratic by factoring, but now it's not always the best option. Sometimes we're going to need to square root it. So I'm going to do problem, I think number 8. Okay, so just like when we solved with factoring, we want to make sure it's equal to 0. So we're looking for the x-intercept. So that means g of x, or the y value, is going to equal 0. So we substitute in 0 for g of x. And we get 1/2 times x plus 7, the whole thing squared, minus 10. So we want to get the whole thing that is squared to be isolated. That means I need to get rid of this 10. So to get rid of it, I need to add 10 to both sides. That's going to give me 10 equals 1/2 the quantity of x plus 7, the whole thing squared, and then that will cancel out. Now I want to get rid of the 1/2, okay? So instead of multiplying by 1/2, which is what they're asking me to do right now, I'm going to do the opposite. I can't distribute the 1/2 because order of operations says I should multiply this out, square exponents before multiplication. So to get rid of it and to isolate the x plus 7 squared, I'm going to divide by 1/2. Okay. Now dividing by a fraction is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So it's going to be 10 times the reciprocal of 1/2 is 2. So 10 times 2 is 20, and that's going to equal now just the x plus 7, the whole thing squared. Okay. From there, now I'm done. I've isolated that x plus 7 squared. Now I need to square root both sides. So I square root both sides. When I square root the x plus 7 squared, it just cancels out the squared, and I get left with just the x plus 7. Now when I square root 20, I don't know the square root of 20, so I'm just keep it as the square root of 20, the exact amount. But I also know that it has to be a negative square root of 20 as well, because it could have been either one of those that multiplied to 20. So now I'm going to, again, isolate the x now. That means I have to get rid of the 7. It's being asked to add, so I do the opposite, subtract 7. And I have to subtract 7 from both of these. Now 7 and the square root of 20 are not the same thing, so I can't combine them. I'm just going to stick them next to each other. So it's going to be x equals negative 7 minus the square root of 20 and negative 7 plus the square root of 20. Now if I want to plug that into a calculator, let's see if I have a calculator on here. Oh, not very easily. So I plug that into a calculator. I could get an estimated amount, but I'm going to leave it with the exact amount. Okay. And so those are the x-intercepts, the roots, the solution, the zeros, whatever you want to call them, to this quadratic equation. I hope that helps with the homework.